If you were told that the contents in the syringe would take you from number 5 in the world to number 1 in the world, would you take it? If you were told that the contents in these 2 vials were undetectable and that you would never get caught and you would be unstoppable, would you take it? Don't comment, because I don't want you to lose your job. Leave that to me. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about these 2 substances. Erythropoietin, but we're going to call it EPO, and testosterone are both naturally occurring substances that are produced in the human body. EPO, the purpose of this is to produce red blood cells. Somebody who is suffering with anemia would require a synthetic form of this. Somebody in the sports world who is already enhanced naturally, if they were to take this, it will improve their aerobic capacity, supply them with healthy red blood cells, which will get rid of waste products and enable them to perform at the top level with very little chance of fatigue. Testosterone, again, a naturally occurring substance in the body, aids in bone density and muscle growth. Somebody who was suffering with a low libido would take this. So for you guys out there, if you need a little, just saying, would take this substance. Why have I told you this? Because it's going to add more context to my talk. I was involved in the world's largest doping scandal in sport, the Balco saga. I took EPO, testosterone, amongst other things. Why would I take substances like this? As a young junior, I was going through the ranks and doing really, really well. Performing, breaking records, flying all over the globe, doing what I do. But as I became a little bit more experienced and got further up the ranks, I was competing with other athletes who were far more experienced than I and had difficulty handling loss. As a junior, I was winning gold, silver, and bronze medals. And when I got to the senior ranks, I was finishing 4th, 5th, and 6th. And I found that difficult to comprehend. Even though in the eyes of the public, my sponsors, my coach, and my team, I was doing great. But I didn't see it this way. I began doubting myself and looking for answers. Thinking, why am I not good enough? What am I doing wrong? I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just chose to take the focus from myself and look what other people were doing. And as a result of my frustration, I decided to dump my group, dump my coach, and find out what the other athletes over the other side of the world were doing. I got myself grouped up with a new group, and it involved a new program. It wasn't just about sprinting and nutrition. It involved doping. I was presented an opportunity. I was ranked number 5 in the world. And I was presented an opportunity to go from number 5 in the world to number 1 in the world. Now, despite all the alarm bells that were ringing in my mind, telling me you shouldn't do this, my natural curiosity said, I don't care what this is saying, I've got to get there. I stepped into the office, took off the lid, put the needle in, and drew up my first contents of EPO. I put it down, I lifted up my stomach, now I'm not stripping here, and I took my first injection. From that point on, I was no longer an athlete. I was synthetically enhanced. I was breaking all the rules. I knew I was breaking the rules, but to be number 1 was more important. The fame, the glory, the money, the success, it came quick and fast. But as quick as it all came crumbling down. I got caught. And as a result of this, I was handed a 2-year suspension from sport and a lifetime ban from the Olympic Games. I could no longer compete in the Olympic Games for the rest of my life. I was embarrassed to the point that I would never ever go out in public. For 2 years, I stayed in isolation. I wouldn't go out in public. When I had to go to the shops, I would shop at night with a hoodie on, masks, and I wouldn't let people see my face. The only people in the shop at the time were those that were stacking the shelves. Me and them would just be in the shop just doing our thing. Time went along, and the opportunity to get back involved in sport presented itself. And with this, it brought a new degree of problems. My return back into sport brought a lot of attention to me that I couldn't handle. For the best part of 20 years, I was engineered to run from point A to point B as fast as possible, but I had no idea how to handle disappointments up here. So as I got more frustrated, I began pointing fingers at other people, blaming them for my own actions, for what I was doing wrong. I failed to see it was my fault. Instead, I started to blame everybody else for it. And the more I blamed other people, the more I saw my opportunities were becoming less and less. It was then, at that point, that I came up with a remarkable solution on how I could turn this around. My solution came in the form of 4 fingers and 1 thumb. Every time I or yourself find you're pointing the finger at other people, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. Well, mine are curled, but you know what I mean. There are 3 fingers pointing back at you, asking you 3 key questions. Why am I here? What are we going to do about it? And where do we start? Why am I here? These are the questions I had to ask myself. Why am I here, Dwain? I'm here because I chose to dope. I lost belief in myself. I wanted to know what everyone else was doing as opposed to what I could do better. And as a result of my actions, I have now got a 2-year ban from sport. I've got to pay back everything I earned. And I'm banned from the Olympic Games for life. That's why I'm here. The second question asked, what are we going to do about it? I had to dig deep. What are we going to do about it? We're going to take accountability. I didn't understand that word as a young man. I'm like, what's that mean? Own up, tell the truth, despite what consequences come off the back of it. We're going to look back at where all these issues started to stemmed from. The problem didn't just happen. It's an accumulation from the past. Now, those of you that know my story, you'd know with enough detail that I had a torrid childhood. I was beaten for telling the truth. I was beaten for lying, so I had no idea where I stood. So all those insecurities followed me throughout my success and ultimately came to a point. So it starts from then. How do we improve this? We start identifying habits and looking at ways to overcome them. And the most important question is the little finger. Where do we start? We start right here, right now. You don't wait for a minute. You don't wait for 5 minutes. You don't wait a day. Because if you wait a day, the strength of your idea is gone. It loses weight. The light of that idea, it diminishes. And as a result of that, you're going to continue sitting down in your chair, having a cup of tea, rich tea biscuit, watching EastEnders. Instead, you could be focusing on yourself and looking at what steps you can take to improve. How did I know this worked for me? I remember during my suspension, I would have journalists chucking questions at me. Dwain, is it unfair that you can't compete? And me with my furious mentality at the time, I'll be like, yes, it is unfair that I can't compete. I should be allowed. I was talking a lot more violently than that, but you get the gist. And as a result of my knee-jerk reactions, I'd open the papers the next day and I'd have a 2-page spread. It's unfair that Dwain can't compete. And when I would speak to meat promoters, you're able to get me run, they're like, Dwain, you can't compete here. You're bringing the sport into disrepute. You're bad news for us right now. I had no idea of my actions, how it ruined everything. And by pointing the finger at everybody else, it made it even worse. So the change came when I sat back and I looked at a paper article and I saw myself doing this, angry. And I thought, every time I point the finger, what can I do better? When I saw that, I realized that I am the problem. When the journalist called me again the following week, Dwain, why are you not competing? You're leading up to the Olympic Games. You have now become eligible. You can compete. My response was, I just want to be an athlete and I want the opportunity to compete for my country. It was then that I realized in order for things to change, first, you have to change. The following day, I opened the newspaper, no 2-page spread. It was a small little column. The heat had gone down. It was then that I realized that I can change the outcome of anything I want to do. My opportunities to compete became more frequent. I had to spend a lot of time conducting myself properly in front of the media. It was no longer about just training the physical side of things. I had to train up here. So if I can change, every single one of you can change. It just involves 4 fingers and 1 thumb. And once I stopped pointing the finger at other people, this finger came in. There was no need for me to blame. And the real trigger for my action to go forward when my thumb was up, that told me I'm good to go. All right, so we're going to end this talk. I want you guys to remember, whenever you find yourself in a bit of a bother, we're going to repeat this. We're going to say 4 fingers and 1 thumb. We're going to do this collectively, yeah? All right, so when we find ourselves in a bit of bother, what do we rely on? 4 fingers and 1 thumb. Thank you, everybody.